Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Too Opinionated, where today I'm joined by actress, director, singer, writer, Jill of all trades, Victoria Gordon. So, welcome, Victoria.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. You're into so much, and we have a lot to talk about.
Oh yeah.
But I like to start here. What made you want to become an entertainer? How'd you get into the entertainment business?
Well, I'm from Los Angeles, born and
Yeah,
raised here. And what's really unique is both my parents were also born and raised here. So we are an LA family through and through.
you
And
never hear that.
no, and it's so funny because my parents grew up with people. Like it's not like my parents grew up alone and isolated and whatever. They had friends growing up. So it's always funny to me how people are like, wow, you're such an LA family. Now I will say my grandmothers both grew up in LA. One moved here when she was 4 and one when she was 9. So
Okay,
that's rare. That is unusual. But
that
my
is
kids,
very rare.
that's odd. So like when my grandmother moved here when she was 4, moved here in 1922, and it was like the Wild West.
Wow. Oh yeah,
Like,
back then.
yeah, there were like there were bean fields as far as the eye could see. I mean, they were here so early. So for them, it was a different world. But like when my parents grew up here, it wasn't, obviously it was very different from how it is now. LA has been built up considerably, but it was
Right.
a very much a normal city in America. And so I grew up here, they grew up here. My grandfather, my dad's father, was in the business as well, and my dad too. So I grew up around a lot of that. And I don't think I ever really had a moment where I was like, I'm going to work in entertainment. But from my no, I mean, I don't think there was ever this like, oh, I'm going to LA to be a star. Like, I think there was always kind of a sense of that. Because when I think back on my earliest career aspirations, they were always in entertainment. So it just
Right.
was how I saw my life going. Now, how I got to where I am now is a whole other story. But it was always something I wanted to do and something I wanted to be part of.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really great. When you were in school, did you take theater class or were you in band, anything like that?
Well, okay. I did take a little bit of everything. In middle school, I was in choir, I was in band. When I got to high school, I got my first agent and I started going out on auditions. And I thought, you know
Ah,
what? I can do high school theater or I can do real work.
right.
And
Let's
I
get
just,
paid.
well, there was that. I mean, I'm not going to lie. The pay was lovely. That was a great part of it. But also, I just thought, I can make these connections and have opportunities in a few years that these people won't
Right.
have. And to be honest, the theater kids at my high school were very cliquish. So I never really fit in there. And I thought, why waste my energy on that when I can go work? And I worked and I had a lot more fun.
Yeah. No, I think that's the right decision. Have fun, make a little bit of money. That's good.
It was the right decision for me. I can imagine there are some kids. I was a very disciplined child from the time I was very young. So for me,
Yeah.
it wasn't hard to do that. I imagine for some kids, it would be hard to have these kind of two worlds going. So it was the right choice for me, but I don't know that it would have been the right choice for everyone.
Right. 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 So what kind of work were you doing at that time?
Mostly commercials.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
All right.
remember one period there when I was a junior in high school, and I had two national commercials airing at once. And for some reason, they both aired on MTV a lot. So my parents would turn on MTV in the morning and just leave it on all day to see if they could catch my commercial by the end of the day. And I mean, during each show, we'd catch one or the other. Or one time we caught both in one commercial break. That was kind of cool.
Nice.
So
That's awesome.
we made good money on those nationals. And that was a really fun time. People in school were like, aren't you in a commercial? And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
me.
And on MTV, I mean, they may have been watching at that time.
Well, you know what's even funnier? I don't even want to get into this too much because it's so out of left field. But there was a show on MTV called World's Strictest Parents.
Yep.
And it just so happened that at the same time that I had these two commercials going, a girl from my high school was on World's Strictest Parents. So everyone was watching MTV all the time because, of course, everyone had to see what happened to this girl on World's
Of
Strictest Parents.
course.
I mean, and then of course my commercial keeps coming on, and I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get in the middle of this. I just did my job, and she just went on a reality show. But yeah, it was just funny timing.
That is pretty funny. What was the commercial?
I had the time, the two that were running at the same time. One was for Bing, if you remember Bing, the search engine for
I remember
Microsoft.
being.
I was an elf, I beatboxed, and the other was for Burger King, and it was a Burger King tie-in with one of the Twilight movies. So
Oh,
I had Twilight stuff that they gave us from the set, which was really cool. And that was a fun time because I had these two commercials going, and again, my classmate on MTV. It was quite a time for MTV at my high school.
so were you a Twilight fan? Because when those were coming out, I mean, everybody seemed to be a fan at that time.
I was a 14-year-old girl. So of
Yeah.
course,
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, that's basically how I see it. I actually, to be honest with you, don't know if I'd be a fan if I picked one up today, but when I was 14, it was
Oh, it's
super
so
cool.
big.
Oh yeah, and every girl was into it. And I think people wanted to make fun of it quite a bit. And I can acknowledge as an adult that Twilight has some harmful elements to it, but at the same time, I get why for 14-year-old girls it was such a cool fantasy. It was so much more fun than our high school.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that it took off the way it did.
Yeah. So as someone who is pretty nerdy and obsesses over a lot of different, fantasy and sci-fi type of shows, we checked out Twilight when it came out. My oldest was really into it, so we checked that out. The girls and the women who went to that movie, I mean, it was crazy. I'd never seen anything like that. I thought, coming in, I kind of knew what fandom was like. That was a whole different level of fandom at that time. It was
Oh
crazy.
yeah, it was. And I think it really shows, it's a reminder even to this day to producers and other people looking at audiences that women do make up a sizable audience. And
Yes.
you should not ignore that. And that goes for sci-fi, that goes for fantasy, that goes for anything. But women will come if you make something for them.
Yeah. That's exactly right. When back, I'm dating myself, but back in the '90s, I ran a group of comic book stores, and which was awesome. But at that time, there was no girls. If a woman walked into the comic shop, everything stopped because you never saw that. It was very male focused. And one of the nice things to see over the last 25, 30 years is it's really become much more inclusive. So now, being nerdy or geeky, that's not just a strictly male thing. It's very popular with everybody, and that's been awesome. Watching that kind of grow has just been great.
Oh yeah, it's really, I think it's nice that it's opened up. And I'm not a huge comic book person or anything, but I appreciate the art form and I appreciate that it used to
Yeah.
seem very remote. And I think even in my teenage years, I'm 27. So in my teenage years, it still seemed kind of like that's a guy's thing.
Yeah.
But as time has gone on, I definitely think I think Disney helped quite a bit opening it
Disney
up.
did, absolutely. Disney and cosplay helped
Oh,
quite a bit.
cosplay, that I can get behind. I love dressing up as anything. So my fandom that I grew up on, because I'm a millennial, is Harry Potter.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah,
That another really good fandom. That's a great one.
I grew up on that. So I used to dress up because I have naturally very curly hair. I would dress
Yeah.
up as Bellatrix Lestrange. And I remember the night that the last movie premiered, I was running around with my wand and my Bellatrix costume and be like, I killed Sirius Black. I killed all over the movie theater because no one else was dressed up like Bellatrix. And people just got such a kick out of it because it was different. So
Yeah,
I think it's
that's
great
great.
and an opportunity for young people, for girls and for women, really, frankly, both,
Yeah.
to be part of this community. And I mean, my sister has some friends who are my sister's childhood best friend is really, really into that stuff. And she probably in another generation would have been told, no, you don't want to do that. You want to go do, I don't know, bake something.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, though, she loves baking. I think we've also opened that up. This pandemic has made everyone a baker. But
Yeah, true.
Greatly that she's had the opportunity to explore that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what kind of got you into not just acting, but actually actively creating, and writing some of these? You've got some really interesting stuff out there, but what made you want to get on that side of it, kind of behind the camera?
I always liked writing. I won an award when I was in second grade for writing, and this shouldn't be surprising because my grandfather was a writer. And I always was sort of told, like, but you're not a real writer. Like, I didn't do poetry. No, I'm serious. When I was a senior in high school, there's an award at my high school given to the most outstanding writer in the senior class. And I
Yep.
mentioned to a teacher that I trusted quite a bit. In hindsight, I don't trust her for other reasons, but at the time, and I said,
That's right.
why? And she said, well, it's really for serious writers. And I don't exactly know what she meant by that, but I didn't apply. And I just think I always kind of thought, well, I'm not really a writer. Like, I can write these cute little scripty things or whatever, but I'm not a writer. And then when I was, I guess, a freshman in college, I somehow found myself watching 30 Rock quite a bit at night. And I was like, but why am I not a writer? Like, why are my stories any less valid? Tina Fey writes. Why can't
That's right.
So that's what really pushed me towards actually writing. And then as for creating, that was completely by accident because I had written this pilot as part of my time at the Second City in Hollywood. And I did a reading of it here in LA as part of something at Second City. And it was like a huge hit. Like the audience was just laughing like crazy. And my parents said, why don't you make that? And I said, I can't just like make a show. Like you don't just get to make stuff. And they said, get the cameras.
Why not?
Well, that's the thing. My sister was at USC Film School at the time. And she's like, I can get my friends to come help. We can get the sound equipment and all that. And we did it. And it was very, very low budget, very, you know,
Yeah.
but it was a good training experience. And I began to realize that that was in the early days of like, there were web series and all that, but that was shortly, I think maybe there were 2 or 3 Netflix original series at that point. Like it was a whole different world even. And
yeah, it was early. And that wasn't even that long ago.
No, that's the crazy thing. My freshman year of college, I took a class on television, like the business of television.
Yeah.
And we did not have a single Netflix original series yet. Pre-House of Cards. I was like, I almost think I should be given the opportunity to retake the class. Like get this whole handle on it. And I bet now it's a completely different class. It's just
I'm sure.
It's a whole new world. So I feel like I got in at a good time in that regard because suddenly it was like anyone can make content and anyone can put it online and anyone can do anything. And I went for it.
Yeah, that's pretty pretty awesome. And how terrible is that for somebody? You want a teacher to be motivating. I don't know why she would exclude anybody that was interested in writing.
You know, in hindsight, that should have been a red flag. I will. So here's the thing. I had my 10th grade English teacher, became like my school mom. And I was her TA for 2 years. And she was, I trusted her implicitly. So when she told me not to apply, I just didn't apply. And by the time I graduated high school, shortly before I graduated, she and I had a huge falling out. And in the years since, I'm coming up on my 10-year graduation anniversary, so I don't know if that's something to be excited about or scared about, but in the years since, I've seen her places and I've tried to sort of be like, hi, how's it going, whatever. She acts like she barely knows me. So honestly, this all should have been a red flag. Like I would say to anyone who gets someone to say something like that to you, it's about them, it's not about you.
That's right.
Don't let it become about you. If she had that insecurity, she should have just not said anything. But of course, she said something. So yeah, my advice to anyone in that situation would be don't make someone else's insecurity about you.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice because you want to surround yourself with positive people. Creating or being involved in the entertainment business is such a difficult thing to do. It's not an easy thing to break into. So you got to surround yourself with people that are going to be kind of positive, or else it kind of brings you down and makes it that much more difficult. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah, no, and I'll be honest too. There is a time to get feedback, and you're not always going to get feedback you like.
That's right.
Really consider what's motivating that feedback. I think if I were giving someone feedback, I would never be considered if they said, well, what made you say that? Or why would you encourage me to think that way? Or what do you mean by serious writer? Like, I think you're within your rights to sort of, I wouldn't say get argumentative or combative, but understand what they mean. That's
right. Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah, that's really good. So your grandfather, pretty legit writer. He wasn't just a writer. He was kind of big time.
Okay. He was a cool guy. And one of the really great accomplishments he had was that I think his first TV season was like maybe 1952. So he came out to California. Just for the audience who doesn't have my bio in front of them, my grandfather's first gig was writing for Jack Benny. And he and his partner at the time, Hal Goldman, ran the radio program for several years. And I think their first season on TV was like 52. And my grandfather continued to work in television until 1990. And he did not miss a single television season. He was working on staff for all of those years. So that's a really unique accomplishment and something that he's no longer with us, but I'm very proud of him for being able to do that.
You should be. He got to basically grow up with TV. Jack Benny, you can't get any better than that starting out. And then to go all through, the 80s, which was such a great time for television. That's and if I remember right, he worked with like Smothers Brothers and a lot of other shows, Three's Company, really good stuff. That's just amazing.
He did a season on Carol Burnett, and what's really funny, one of my favorite Carol Burnett sketches comes from his season, and I never realized that until I was watching it with my dad, and he said, your grandfather wrote that, and I said, wait, what? No. And he said, yeah, he did. Look it up if you don't believe me. And I looked it up, and sure enough, he did. It was, if you've ever seen the Dentist sketch with Tim Conway.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's an iconic sketch. It's hilarious.
Well, my grandfather had a special ability. His real talent was, well, he had two. One was speed. He could write faster than anyone, and I've inherited that from him, which is a great skill to
That's
me.
a good skill.
I love it. And the second one was he was a joke guy. So, in a writer's
Yeah.
room, you want to balance out a bunch of different things. And if they wanted a guy who could just come up with a joke, we need a joke here, give it to Al Gordon. So my grandfather was often employed because they were like, well, we need a good joke guy. And he had a very interesting career. He was referenced, and I always meant to write about this, but I never did. Steve Martin wrote an autobiography a couple years back, maybe like 10 years ago. And he mentioned my grandfather, but he said Al Goldman and Hal Goodman, but it was Al Gordon and Hal Goldman. And I was so tempted to write him and say, great book, fix that. But I never did because I was like, you know what, that's so petty. But it was my
I'd have done it. You want me to take care of that for you? I'll take care of that.
Go for it.
It's like, come on, Steve. You got the names mixed up.
It's on IMDb. I mean.
Did I read that you actually played the violin too?
I did, but that had nothing to do with Jack Benny. My mom's family is all musical, and my great uncle was a symphony conductor. He didn't have children, so he treated my mom and her brothers like his children, and by association, his three great nieces like his grandchildren. Which was, I have to say, my great uncle was an incredible and extremely generous man, and his one thing was everyone had to be musical. So my cousin, who is 11 years older than I am, played the violin, and I wanted to be just like her. So I said, I'm gonna play the violin. So at 4 years old, I started playing the violin.
Yeah, that's not an easy instrument to play, but it makes sense if he was kind of involved in that type. Because normally, when you're younger, you choose guitar or a clarinet, flute, something along those. It's not usually violin. So,
I thought, let me count 3 violins, and I don't play violin anymore, but I'll count myself for this: 1 cellist and 2 harpists, and my mom and my sister are harpists. And
that's awesome.
My cousin's son, my godson, is 16 months old today. And what's so funny is we expose him to music as much as possible, not in the sense of like pick an instrument, but just 16 months. And I keep joking I have a collection of violins for him, which I'm sure he'll take me up on someday. But he loves my mom's harp. Like he's so interested in the harp, and my mom can play it and he'll just be mesmerized. So, maybe he'll be a harpist. But then a couple days ago, he was looking at my uncle's cello and he kept pointing to the cello. He just thought the cello was so cool. So I said to his mom, hey, he might be into the cello. And she said, I can get behind a cello. So we've got a kid there who's learning a little bit about the orchestra. And it's a really interesting way to start a musical education with like all these relatives who can sort of explain the different instruments.
Yeah, that's really terrific. So could you pick up a violin and still play a little bit?
I could scratch away Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. The truth is, I started the violin and I immediately was like that Joe Bluth moment of like, I've made a huge mistake. I did not play violin, and I had a lot of musical talent, but just no interest. And so when I was about 12 or like 11, I was begging my parents to let me take voice lessons. And my mom was like, nah, you should keep studying violin. So she brought in a new violin teacher because I had just left my previous violin teacher. And the teacher came and we did a whole like sample lesson. And she pulled my mom aside afterwards and she said, she's good. She has a lot of talent. She doesn't want to be here.
Right.
So I'll teach her if you want, but she doesn't want this. So that's a decision you as a parent have to make. But I'm just telling you what I can see as a teacher. And after that, my mom let me take singing lessons. So I'm really grateful to that woman for not putting, the bottom line ahead of my happiness and for being able to notice that. Like, that's something I really admire in a teacher. Like, on the flip side of the one who told me not to apply for the
That's right.
Who told me or told my mom, really, I'll teach her, but she doesn't want this. So I would encourage you to rethink it. And that's really what set me on the path that I'm on now.
Yeah, that's pretty great. So did you take that love for singing? Did you do theater, or did you immediately start creating your own stuff to do?
No, I did theater. I'm a huge musical theater person, and I just always wanted to be on Broadway, do a big Broadway musical, that kind of thing. So I started doing show tunes from the time I was like 11 or 12. Like, I was a kid who could sing Send in the Clowns at like 13. There's no world where a 13-year-old should be singing Send in the Clowns. No. Even now, like, I did it last year in a show, and it was kind of like, well, you did a great job with it, but like, you can only do this because it's your show. And I'm like, I'll take that.
That's right.
So I have a very strong interest in older show tunes, not just like Golden Age I love the 70s and the 80s, which I hate saying those are older, but you know what I mean. And
Those are older now. They're older.
yeah, I don't do as much contemporary. I have one song from, actually circling back to Steve Martin, from Bright Star, that I do.
Yeah.
And I have a song from like the early 2000s that I throw into my sets, but for the most part, I tend to stick to very traditional selections.
Yeah. So I've been watching some of your cabaret performances. They're awesome. I mean, you get amazing voice. I loved it. I loved it. I love the fact that you just jump around too. You know, it's
Yeah,
just it's not just one type of thing. You have a whole range of songs that you're singing. It's a lot of fun. Plus, you interact. It's not like you're just jumping song to song without
yeah.
speaking to the audience. But that's what made you want to do that. And did you do it before a live audience before you had to kind of switch to a Zoom audience?
I did. I
Yeah.
did. And I love performing for a live audience. I will tell you, the Zoom thing, well, actually, I was on Twitch, but it's a little bit tougher,
Right, Twitch. Yeah.
regardless of which platform you're on, because the audience isn't reacting. So
Yeah.
I just felt it was much harder to do. But I started doing my cabarets in 2018, I believe, and I've done them all over LA. I got my like big show at Feinstein's at Vitello's, which is a huge
Yeah.
venue here in LA, in November of 19. And then I was getting all geared up for my next show when we got shut down. But when I realized I was going online, I had to make a lot of modifications. So one was that I had to do all different music every time. So I learned, I think, 88 songs. And
Oh, wow.
it was really hard and not something I want to repeat anytime soon, but it was a great exercise. And most of my shows were only 5 songs in like 25 minutes, because
Yeah.
how long are people gonna, I mean, we stare at screens all day. Like, I'm not trying to, it's not the same level of interaction where like you go to a club and you
That's
sit at a
right.
table and you go to meal. So I wanted to make it enjoyable and not overstay my welcome. It was
I love
really,
that.
well, it was an adjustment. I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah.
it was an adjustment. And I still feel like, I really just, I'm looking forward to being live again. But I'm glad I did it, and I really had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot of music. And so
88 songs is a lot of songs.
yeah, and what was great about it though is that there were some where I could say, I don't ever want to hear this song again. Like, I'm done. This was not my song. And there were some where I said, I really want to take the time to
Yeah.
explore them more. So my voice coach and I isolated, I think, like 24 songs from the course of the year that we were like, this would be a good song to do in an online show or
Yeah.
in a live show. I mean, there are several songs that I couldn't do because I didn't have good karaoke tracks for them. So like stuff that I've done in my live shows that I would love to do again, but I can't until I can have a band. So it's a balancing act. It's figuring out
Sure.
what we're going to do and frankly when we're going to do it, because I have no idea what things are going to look like in even like a month from now. I just have no idea.
Hopefully better.
Oh, I'm hopeful. I'm very but at the same time, I wonder how quickly we're going to go back to certain things. Like how
Yeah.
quickly we're going to go back to sitting in a theater or like sitting in a club where you're sitting, basically on top of the person at the table next to you.
Right.
And like, how quickly are you going to want to be near me when I sing? And I hate to be gross because it looks so glamorous, but when people sing, they spit. And like,
That's right.
how much are people going to want to be near that? So I'm hoping that outdoor venues become kind of the buzzword of the summer and everyone's doing like outdoor shows, because I will totally do that. But I don't know when we're going to see a real theater experience again.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can tell you that my wife works for Live Nation. And so they lost like 98% of their business over the last year because everything shut down. So their intention is to be back to normal as far as those type of performances next year. So they're not really, maybe it'll start easing into it this year, but really they're looking at next year, before we really get back to normal.
Yeah, but they're also doing huge venues, and the logistics, I feel for them,
Yeah.
because figuring out how to do that is going to be so tough.
It'll be a little different. And I mean, you got to look at, like, if you look at just movie theaters, they've already kind of, all the big, film studios are releasing those online the same day they're going into theaters, which is completely different. If you can go to HBO or Disney and watch the movie instead of going to, who knows what that's going to lead to.
I'm curious to see how that works in terms of future movie budgeting.
Yeah. I think it's going to lower it.
It's going to lower it, but I wonder if that might actually be a good thing in some ways. Now, I can't speak to the special effects part because that's obviously huge, but
Right.
There is so much. If you look at a film budget, like really look at a film budget and not just like what a studio puts out when they're done.
Right.
There is a lot of expense that could be cut back considerably. And I think they're going to have to really look at how to do that. And I also think, and this is minor compared to the obviously major problem of like they need to pay everyone, but people are not paid equitably across the board.
Sure.
People who are what we call above the line, like the actors, the writers, directors can get tons of money. And yet the people who are responsible for, it's like an iceberg, they're the tip of the iceberg. Well, no, I mean the people who do the sound and the lights and the effects and the
right.
Like they are a huge part of creating the experience and building the world of the film. So the fact that they don't get paid in the same ballpark as the actors, writers, directors, producers is always kind of disappointing to me. And I wonder if this might lead towards more of a downsizing of salaries that helps balance it out a bit better.
Yeah, that's actually really unique. I hadn't thought of that, but good for you for thinking that way, because you're right. A lot of underappreciated workers there.
Well, totally. I mean, you look at a film. I mean, my sister's editing right now for a web series I'm working on, and she is very talented. And she is piecing, I mean, it's like, yeah, we have all the raw content there, good performances, good writing, good filming, but she is taking it from being a good, hunk of clay to being a good sculpture. So you can't deny the huge role that those people play in making any of these films happen, especially on like I just watched, well, not just, I guess it was like 2.5 months ago. On Christmas Day, we watched Soul, the Pixar film.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Of course, the minute it came out, we all sat down and watched it because my sister and I are 90s kids. So we grew up with Pixar movies. And when you look at the credits on a film like that, I mean, thousands of people are working on a film like that. And they all played a role in getting the film not just done, but done in a good way.
You don't think that quick scroll at the end is enough?
My sister is obsessed with the Pixar babies, the production babies when they do the Pixar movie credits, like the babies that were born. So we always pause and she goes through all the names and is like, oh, I like that name. No, I don't like that. Who named the kid that? Oh, that's a cute name. Like, that's my sister. My sister, like I said, went to USC Film School and ultimately decided that she preferred studying film and enjoying film to working in film. So she's the person who, when you're sitting in the theater at the end of a movie, will stay till the dead last credit.
Okay.
No post-credit scene. She will stay the whole time. So yeah, I've seen through her how many people work on these.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. My son's in film school here locally, and he says that film school has made him not enjoy movies as well, because now he's seen behind the scenes, of everything that's going on, and it's kind of taken a little bit away from the pure enjoyment from it.
Yeah, no, it's the opposite for Nat, because she the thing is, she didn't really want to work in the industry. Her major at USC was then called Critical Studies, but is now Cinema and Media Studies. And the idea is that it's a program centered around analyzing film.
Yeah, I like that.
She got to talk about movies all day and analyze them for whatever topic they were discussing. And for her, that was perfect.
Yeah. Do you think that this new dynamic that we're still kind of defining, coming from a writing family, do you think that it may lead to more emphasis on or re-emphasis maybe on the writing side of it? Because to me, growing up, the best movies were, from 40, 50, 60 years ago. As far as the writing, I know special effects wise, we've come a long way, but I'm hopeful that this leads to a more emphasis on the dialogue and the writing and just a good story.
Well, you still find that. I think the challenge is we kind of have multiple tracks going, as you well know, in film. We have the big budget tentpole franchise track, which is completely different. And then we have the indie film world where you do get brilliant scripts. The challenge is trying to merge everything together, because when you're dealing with all the special effects and all the battle scenes and all that, I just generally find the scripts don't have that same, it's hard to. I mean, it's very hard to create that world alongside the effects. Now, what I would love is to see someone who can do both, who can somehow balance out the need for effects and the need for big action scenes and the need for all that with the needs of the actual characters that they've created.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So you've had all this experience. You've done singing, commercials, which is a terrific training ground, if you're going into acting or writing, anything like that. So you've had all this experience and history growing up. So now you're working on this. Absolutely. I love this web series. So I watched the first one. Yeah. So talk a little, I'll let you describe it, because it's really, it's really unique. I love the idea and the fact that you're actually letting us see different pilots, but you're doing it in a way where it's almost like it's kind of like a table read. Yeah, I'll let you explain. I'm talking too much, but I love it. Love
I
it.
like hearing someone else's because I'm so used to talking about it that it's nice to hear how someone
Yeah.
else sees it. Pilot season is what you're talking about. And I
Yes.
created this web series, which is 5 different pilot readings airing over 5 weeks. And they're all sitcom pilots written by me, but they're all kind of different. So the first one, which you saw, is Behind the Times. And Behind the Times is like a multi-camera family sitcom. It's a satire. It's got like the typical yuck yuck kind of humor of a classic family sitcom. It hangs a lampshade on every single trope. And so it's just like, if you like satire and you like snark, it's that kind of show. In the middle, we have the 3 single cams. We have Underachievers, which debuts tomorrow night. Which is about 2 high schoolers who get kicked out of high school over a misunderstanding and their attempts to create a new life for themselves outside of their overachieving identities. We have Sunny, which I think is the first produced show to take place in Antarctica.
Nice.
I'm so excited about this one. It's about a 16-year-old whose parents are researchers, and when they get a placement on the continent, they got to take her with them. So she moves to Antarctica. And then we have the nuclear option, which we filmed last week, which is about a big, rich, dysfunctional family fighting over money, kind of in the vein of Arrested Development. And then the one we're filming this week is called Fame Adjacent, and that's more of a dramedy. That's about a mother and daughter who are both actresses, and the mother's never really had a lot of success, but the daughter just got cast as a series regular on a successful TV show. And it's the mother dealing with the balance of her feelings over her daughter's success and her own.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, so we've got a little bit of everything. I keep saying to people, you might not like all 5, but you'll like something. And we can't film them on sets and everything because we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
So we're doing exactly what you and I are doing here. We're on Zoom, we rehearse, we record on Zoom, and then we add in sound effects, music, stock footage, etc., to try to create the world. So what I'm saying to people who are not, because like some people have been like, but it's not a TV show. I said, no, it's not. It's a chance to see how this concept works and to get a little bit of entertainment that's fresh and different. And if you just go in with that attitude, you can have a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I absolutely loved it because I like the idea of, I'm assuming that the end goal would be to have at least some of these made into a regular TV show at some point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I love I mean, if I was an executive, and you're bringing me script ideas, that type of thing, I mean, this is so much better because you've actually got real actors, good ones, really good ones, bringing the script to life. And I think it's a credit to you and the actors that you have working on the first one, that after a few minutes, it didn't, it just seemed like a regular show to me. Once you kind of buy into the premise, it's just, you just go with it. So you're into the acting part of it and not necessarily the surroundings, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and I think the other person who gets a lot of credit is my sister, because she has really helped shape it so that, like, she added music. I found
She did good.
She did a great job, and so she helps create this world. So like, we set it up and we gave her a lot of good material to start with, and she really just helped shape the perception of the world. Because you're right, at a certain point you look at it and it's not like, okay, I'm watching a Zoom conversation. It's like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, wow, it is on Zoom. Like, that must have been kind of hard. And the answer is, we have learned a lot in the last few weeks. That was the first one we filmed, so it's like we were learning as we went. And now it's like I could tell you in my sleep exactly the filming setup and what people need to do. It's just funny how we've learned it so quickly.
Yeah, yeah, it's just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that, and they're short enough that it holds your attention, but long enough that it kind of stays with you. Like I finished watching it, I was still thinking about it. I was like, well, I'd watch that show if they made that into a series. I'd watch that.
Well, that's the thing, and I've kind of tried to think about where the different shows would go and like which shows would have which homes, because they're all different. And
Yeah.
Like, Behind the Times is the kind of show where any network that is looking for something sort of biting and satirical and is built in like the old kind of mold, but is clearly making fun of it, like, that's where that goes. That's where Behind the Times lives. And it's a multi-camera comedy. And as I pointed out last week, there is, I believe, a rule from the Emmys that at least one of the shows nominated for Best Comedy has to be a multicam. So that's a selling point too, if anyone's thinking about it.
Yeah.
The nomination. But that aside, regardless, it's just the kind of show that has a lot of snark potential and a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. That's absolutely the truth. So you've got one coming out tomorrow. So that'd be March the 2nd, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that one's titled what?
That's Underachievers. So
Underachievers.
Underachievers is our youngest cast across the board because it's about high school seniors and sort of, so it's, you got these two overachievers and best friends, and they make a stupid mistake and get kicked out of school. And now they can't go to Harvard. And so instead of, they've always had a plan, they've always had a goal. So now they've got a new goal, and that's that they're going to be like the best at being the worst. Like they're going to go for underachieving. And that one, I feel like if you're into like, I mean, depends on how old you are. If you're into like Felicity type shows, it'd be enjoyable. If you a funny version of like a CW show, I see it as kind of like a Freeform kind of show. If Freeform, the network. And,
absolutely. Used to be ABC Family. Now it's Freeform.
I grew up with. When they changed the name, I was like, I think I'm too old for this now. I think we've aged out. There are things, I feel like my generation has had some serious moments of like, we're too old. For me, that was one. And then TikTok becoming a hit. I was like, I have officially gotten old. When all the TikTok, I was like, wait, no, wait, we're on Instagram. Where are you?
Yeah, TikTok has been a difficult one for me because, being older, it took me a while for Facebook. It took me a while for Instagram and Twitter. And now there's this TikTok, which is kind of like Vine on steroids, if you remember Vine.
I feel so old admitting that like it's just a little bit past my like ability to handle TikTok, but I did just get on Clubhouse, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I've checked out Clubhouse. That's an interesting one. There's a lot of interesting people on there. I'll say that's good network.
Yeah, and like I have friends who said, "Oh, you should check out this conversation." My sister was listening to one earlier that was just like someone reading a Harry Potter book, or it was Harry Potter. I mean, just like there's all kinds of stuff, or like they have conversations about health and about science and about nutrition, but also like about religion and current event. Like they have something for everyone.
So what brought you to the idea of putting all of this on a web series? Were you just writing stuff as you went and you had all these great ideas and you're like, what can I do with these? What brought you to the point you said, well, yeah, I'll just stick them all on a web series?
Both the fact that I had them and also the fact that I realized I wasn't going anywhere. Physically, not like career-wise. I mean, I was
right. Yeah, just like the rest of us who were kind of stuck for the last year. I get it.
Yeah, that I was stuck at home because I think we all at different times hit a breaking point where at first you're like, oh, we're just going to be here for like a few weeks. And I was like, oh, we're just going to be here for like a month. And then I think May or June, we all kind of hit a point. And I can tell you, each of my family members hit it at a different point. But I remember hitting a point of like, I'm not leaving this house. Like, when I don't know when I'm going to leave. Like, who really knows how long I'll be here? And I decided to turn that frustration into productivity, which is a lot easier to say than it was to do.
Sure.
I'm not going to deny that, but I realized that I could get creative and find a way to make these pilots happen. And I said, you know what, now or never, let's go for it.
That's awesome. And I think a lot of people kind of use that time to work on things that they may not have had time to do otherwise. So that's great.
That's true. But also I think the most important thing is like, when people are like, oh my God, I haven't done anything during this pandemic. I'm like, you continue to exist on this. That is beginning to feel like
you're surviving.
I mean, really, it's like I saw my cousin sent me a photo from her Facebook that was one of her friends had posted, or someone she worked with, I think. And it was a family photo from like 2 years ago. And she said, and the friend had captioned it, like, everyone else in this photo is no longer with us because of COVID-19.
That's awful.
Like her mother, her father, her sister, or her brother, her aunt, like all these people in her life had died, and she was the only one in that photo.
Yeah, it's devastating.
And it's like, it really is on some level. If you can make it through this pandemic, you have achieved something. And if you build up the internal strength, as hard as it is to keep going during this time, at the end of the day, no matter how hard this is, no matter what you're stuck with at the end of the day, you made it. And that is not to be discounted. Yeah,
really good point. I think for me, I'm really worried but interested in how this generation of children is going to be affected growing up from this. That a lot of young people that would normally be at that socializing part of their lives have been stuck at home now for a year. And I'm curious to see, what that kind kind of leads to. Hopefully it's some positive stuff, but concerned.
I'm a little scared. Like I said earlier, my godson is 16 months old. And so he was born in October of 2019. And then within the first 2 months of his life, this all got started. So he does virtual mommy and me. That's basically like his mom talking to other moms while he plays on his own. And he doesn't know many places outside of his own home. He only knows like his immediate family. And that's just really sad to me because he hasn't had any experiences. He's never been to a restaurant.
Right.
He's never been out anywhere. Like he's never gone, like his grandmother and I were discussing it. He's never been to like a market and sat in a cart.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, he's never done anything. So I worry because he's very, very attached. And I know attachment is super normal at that age, but it just scares me for when he and his group of kids start actually going to physical locations and their moms have to leave them. And I'm curious to see how it works out. I'm hopeful that we as a society will help find ways to make it easier for them.
Me too.
But at the same time, it's scary to think.
It is. It's scary. We had 3 grandbabies that are a year and a half and younger. So they are all growing up during that time. And we went through that early part of the pandemic where we couldn't even really, like we would interact through a door, that type of thing. And all of them have struggled, over time. We eventually started getting together as a family, but they've struggled with being in any place different from home and anybody different from their parents. It took them a little longer to get adjusted to that. So to me, that's one of the biggest detriments to this whole pandemic has just been the effect that it's bad enough for us grown-ups, but for the little ones.
And I'll tell you the other ones, seniors. I know several elderly people and couples, and I just think they don't need this isolation. This is not good for them. So,
no, it is. You can't get that time back, especially at that age.
No, and I think it's really unfortunate. I have a 99-year-old great aunt, and I'll tell you the other thing. It took her easily about 2 months to find a vaccine, which at 98 and then 99, like this should not have been even an issue. She should have been in the first thing.
Yeah, that's right. They should have been coming to her door.
I was like, how are we still looking for this? Like everyone else in the sort of senior group of family members was vaccinated. Why is she not vaccinated? But part of it is that the system involves, a little bit of computer savvy, and she's 99. And not one of her talents. But I will tell you, in Michigan, so I have a lot of family in Michigan, and my cousin Jackie has an adorable 5-year-old, and he has been very fortunate. Winston School has been open this whole time. So he has been able to the whole time. They closed in the spring and then they reopened in the fall. And they have been so careful. Like they had a case in he's in pre-kindergarten still, or like junior kindergarten. So another grade had like one classroom where there was a case. They were able to shut down that classroom and no one else got it.
Oh, great.
Like, really been extraordinary. And he's in a class with 5 other kids and he gets to go to school every single day, which is just wonderful for him because he gets to socialize. He's a very active, very precocious kid. And it's great for his parents because like his mom can get things done for a couple hours during the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. You would hope that we would have more of that across the country, but it's been a little spotty.
I mean, I'm not saying it's been perfect. It's definitely been like they had, I think they had to shut down because it's a K-12 school. They had to shut down the high school at one point.
Yeah.
I mean, they've had issues, but he's sitting where he is, and it's like his normal life with a mask on. Like it's a challenge, but he's doing really well, and he's thriving in a way that I think a lot of kids can't, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's awesome though. That's good for him. That's good to hear. So, Victoria, I know we gotta wrap up pretty soon, but I wanted to ask you about this because I'd made a note about it. You received advice at one time from Florence Henderson, which is awesome. One of my favorite people ever. So talk about that for a minute.
I love Florence. I met her when I was about 10, and she was just always. I mean, she was as lovely as you could imagine, and. Yeah. We were backstage at a performance and she was singing at the show and I wasn't. So I'm eating dinner and everyone's like, well, wait, why aren't you eating? And Florence explained, no, I don't eat before I sing. And I took that advice and I follow that advice to this day. If I'm going to sing, I don't eat. Now I will flash forward a few years later. I was a kid at the time when this happened. So she was very friendly, lovely, very much like a TV mom. About 10 years later, I was doing a show where I was working on it and she was in it. And of course she remembered me because she was that kind of person. Yeah. And we're chatting backstage and she really wanted coffee and she couldn't find anyone to get her coffee. And so she finally comes into the green room where everyone's hanging out. She's, who do I have to, well, I don't know if we can swear on here. So I was like, who do I have to ask for the coffee around here? And I was working on the show. So I looked at my sister who was nearby. I'm like, now they go find a coffee for Florence. Like, she go like 3 blocks to a coffee shop. And she was like, hearing Florence Henderson say that made it worth it. She was such a cool lady
Hilarious.
and such a wonderful person. She treated everyone beautifully, and she
Yeah.
just wanted to have fun. So I'm really grateful that I got to know her.
Yeah, that's terrific. What a great story and relationship. So how long before do you not eat?
My general rule of thumb is I can eat certain things. Like I'll eat crackers before I sing.
Yeah.
I'll eat very basic food, but like I wouldn't eat a sandwich or like a dish that had any substance to it. So I usually say like if I'm going to sing at 7, I don't really eat after like 4. But that's really for performances. If I'm just rehearsing, I suspend all rules.
Yeah. That's probably what it is. That's probably the reason I haven't become a famous singer. It's I wouldn't give up the food. That's probably what it was.
You never know if you just thought about it. You know, everyone thinks I'm
Hmm.
crazy. There are plenty of singers I know who are like, oh, no, I eat whatever I want before I sing. I'm like, oh, okay, you do you. Everyone do what they're comfortable with. But she was very much, that was right. And I'm glad that she gave me that lesson because it was a good one.
I could kind of see that because it can affect your vocal cords and just your I don't know, I could see that. I could see where that might be a good thing to.
Yeah.
So does that mean you have a big meal after?
No, because when I'm done, I have to say, usually I'm kind of running on like adrenaline. So I don't always feel like I need to eat. What tends to happen is like, say I have a show at 7 or 8, I do the show, and then I'm drinking a ton of water. So I usually have to run to pee very quickly after the show. And then when I move on from that, I might eat a little snack before I go to bed or something. But I'm so amped up at that point that food is not my priority. Like I'm too focused on so many other things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. That's that's probably a good thing. If you can work around making food the center of everything, probably better off.
I know it's funny. I'm not a food person. My grandmother, so my dad's mom, when she was a child, had some kind of illness, like a flu of some sort, and she lost her ability to taste. So she could never taste anything.
Oh, it's terrible.
It was terrible, but at the same time, it kept her in shape. And she never ate much. And I kind of inherited that from her, the sort of not eating much. I can taste, but I just never was like a big food person. And I've just never grown into one. Like for me, food is about fuel, not about like enjoying. My family doesn't get that. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, you want to try everything? I'm like, a little bit of something. So people around me are always like, do you eat? And I'm like, yes, I eat. I tend to eat smaller amounts more frequently anyway. So
well, it's healthier.
It's easier for me. I have a sensitive stomach, and it's just I find that I get full very fast. So I'll like eat a little bit, a couple hours later have a snack, a couple hours after. I prefer.
I think that's a good way to do it.
Everyone's different, you know. I just think that any recommendation that you find is going to have somebody who says, "Oh, this is the way to live," and somebody who says, "If I lived like that, I would not function properly." So you just have to go with what works for you.
That's right. That's right. So during the pandemic, what was your show that you binge watched or that you discovered? You know, while you were stuck at home.
But, okay, so my mom and I had been watching The Good Fight on CBS.
That's a good one.
And during the pandemic, we watched The Whole Good Wife, which was actually, I think it was important that I watched that because I've been compared to Juliana Margulies. And
nice. That's a pretty good comparison.
You know what it is? I think it's the hair because I have naturally curly, dark hair. And then we have that kind of like, you know, polished Jewish thing going on. So I have the Juliana Margulies vibe. I think she's amazing and I adore her. And loved The Good Wife. Makes lawyers so glamorous.
Yeah, it was such a great show. And The Good Fight's a great one too. So see now in the next iteration, The Good whatever, you need to get on that one.
Oh my gosh, please. I will totally work at any of the many Chicago law firms we've been introduced.
You could bring her back from The Good Wife. You could be like I don't know, a niece or a daughter or something of hers. It could totally work.
Or, you know, I got one. So, you know, Alicia retired from law when she got married and had her kids. Let's talk about Alicia and Will before.
Ooh.
And like how Alicia
that's a great one.
And like how she got with Peter. Like if the Kings are listening,
a prequel.
Go down. The Good Wife.
I love it.
Call me up. I'm here.
I love it. Also, I got a suggestion. So I think for one of your cabaret shows, you need to do all cartoon theme songs.
You know, I kind of like that. When I was a kid, I had this album I loved called Tuneful, and one of the songs on Tuneful was like a cartoon theme song medley. So it was like George of the Jungle, the Jetsons, the Flintstones. Like there's a lot of good material there. So I'm not gonna lie, that's a very clever idea.
There you go. You can have that one for free. Just give me an invite.
Of course, always.
Well, Victoria, thank you so much. This has been just the best time. But before I let you go, where can we find pilot season, and is there anything else that you're working on that we can kind of keep an eye out for?
Well, the easiest way to do both of those things is to visit Instagram. We have the TV Pilot Season account, which is at TV Pilot Season. And that'll take you to the website where you can find everything you need to know. And then if you want to follow along with me, I am the Victoria Gordon. And my website is thevictoriagordon.com. Victoriagordon.com is being held hostage. And I say that every time someone asks, because this person is asking insane amounts of money for an undeveloped website. And the more I find out about who it is and what she's doing, the more I'm like, come on, please.
Just let me have it.
And I'll pay for it. I just think the amount she's asking and her sensitivity towards giving it over are getting to be ridiculous. So the Victoria Gordon, that's where you can find.
I like that one better anyway. It's got a little more.
It has a good ring to it, so I'll take it. I'm the Victoria Gordon, not just one of Victoria. I mean, there are many Victoria Gordons, but I'm the Victoria Gordon.
Yeah, but you're the.
I'm Victoria Gordon. So find me at the Victoria Gordon, and you'll be able to keep up with my shows, with my life. Maybe I'll show some photos of my dog occasionally. So that's where.
That's terrific. So anywhere else on social media that we can find you, or is that all?
As I said, I just joined Clubhouse, so I'm Victoria.Gordon from there. So go ahead and check that out. But I'm not into Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. So I'm kind of not super, for a millennial, I'm not super into social media. So I'm there, but it's not my strong suit.
Right.
So find me where you can, but regardless, my website's always there and you can always
contact me. And it's a really good website.
Thank you.
It's very easy to navigate.
I love my website, but it was a project. Trust me. I remember doing it. I had 2 weeks to get it done over a summer, and I just rushed it through, and then I kept making changes. And now I'm at a place where it's I just have to occasionally go in and update individual things.
No, it's really well done. I think social media, you got to pick one. You can be involved a little bit in the others, but you got to have one main one. There's too many of them to be involved in all of them.
Yeah, and honestly, you can get so sucked into just what goes on there, and the environment and the experience. Yeah. It's not always the best idea. I think the less time we spend on social media and the more time we actually genuinely connect with other people, as hard as that is right now, the better we are people. I think we've unfortunately seen many, many negative consequences to social media, and it should not be the thing that rules our lives.
No, I completely agree. At some point, it was just a way to connect with people that you hadn't seen in a while, and then it's just went all wrong.
I mean, I don't even want to get into politics, but as an American living here during the last, half a decade, it has gone from being a way to connect to a way to disconnect, from each other. And
that's really true. That's sadly that's true. It's a shame. Well, Victoria, thank you so much, and you have to come back anytime you have anything going on.
Please, I would love to. This was great.
Yeah, we got to do it again. You're involved in so much. I have no doubt that something's going to hit big. You got to come back.
Thank you.
All right, hold on 1 second. I'm going to hit pause. All right, so that was the talented Victoria Gordon. Yeah, wow. She's involved in so many different things, and just really, really, talented. If you haven't checked out pilot season, please do yourself a favor and do. It's got some really really good stuff. Sounds like her sister's pretty talented as well, and she comes from such a talented family. So that was fun. That was a lot of fun. Her cabaret performances are the best. I mean, she's got just a wonderful voice. To me, I really liked her when she sings some of the older songs. I think her voice fits really well for those. So if you're a fan of that type of thing and show tunes, definitely check that out because it's really well done. And I gave her next great idea. We get her singing some cartoon theme songs. That's the way to go. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to us week after week. We definitely don't take that for granted. Appreciate you coming back. If you haven't done so yet, please go to YouTube under Meisterkhan Pod and subscribe to us. We would appreciate that. Check us out on our website, meisterkhan.com. And until next time, bye, everybody.